Welcome back to the Deep Discog Dive, and today's episode is a first for the series. We're going back to an artist that I already covered in the past and providing an update on what they've been up to since then. Today, we're talking again about arson. I moved again. I'm just gonna say it. Arson, used to love it. Now I think it's a bit overrated. It just keeps putting stuff out like that's the main appeal of it and not any of the actual music itself, especially when it's putting out album covers like this. Today, we're talking about Aphex Twin. Let's dive in. There once was a boy named Rick. He made songs that made men sick. A new sound unearthed, all from the boy birthed in the Irish town of Limerick. The first thing you need to know about Richard D. James is that he was born in August 1971 in Limerick, Ireland. The second thing you need to know is that he got his name from a prior stillborn child. According to Richard, his mother gave him the name so as to not accept the child's death. The third thing you need to know is that second thing is potentially not true. Yeah, our boy Richard tends to play fast and loose with history and stories and life, and so exact details of his upbringing are a little hazy. What we can say for sure is that he started getting into music making in his early teens, showing as much interest in songcraft as he did in gobbledygook sonic wizardry. He attended Cornwall College in 1988 to get a degree in engineering, but he also dedicated time to do DJ sets in Cornwall. The town was seeing a wave of acid techno wash through its clubs, and Richard's tunes fit the vibe perfectly. At one of his regular gigs, he met fellow DJ Tom Middleton and Grant Wilson Claridge. Tom wanted Richard to release a tape on his own label. Richard was hesitant at first, but was convinced to sign a contract whilst tripping on acid. Grant, meanwhile, sought more to win the long game. He and Richard started Reflex Records in 1991. But Reflex wasn't home to Richard's first release. That honor went to Mighty Force Records for the Analog Bubble Bath EP in September 1991, credited to the Aphex Twin. This name was inspired by the audio company Aphex Systems and him being a twin if the stillborn brother story is to be believed. As a big heads up for the rest of this dive, Richard often likes to fill the gaps between mainline studio albums with EPs, singles, other releases. I will try to mention as many of them in passing as I can, and I'll mention key details or highlights from them when I feel the need to, but I am not going to go super in depth on every single one. A few months later, in December, the Aphex Twin released Analog Bubble Bath Volume 2, and already I'm getting mad because Richard switched to the American spelling of analog for no reason. Also, at some point this year, Richard also released the EP Bradley's Beat. This was the first release from Reflex Records. It was also not credited to the Aphex Twin, instead being attributed to Bradley Strider. We're going to see this again. Richard loves to release music under several different pseudonyms, not just Aphex Twin. He's kind of like the MF Doom of electronic music in that sense. January 1992 saw the release of the Didgeridoo EP. Its title track had already been on Analog Bubble Bath Volume 2 under the name Aboriginal Mix, but regardless of what you call it, it's an enjoyable track with one hell of a didgeridoo part, or at least what sounds like a didgeridoo part. Richard apparently spent 3 days cooped up building the timbre of a didgeridoo from scratch. This EP plus the 2 Analog Bubble Bath tapes started getting heavy rotation on Kiss FM, an esteemed London dance radio station. They would also eventually reach the ear of a key record label executive. But before I jump into that, let me mention a few more early releases. In May 1992, the Pac-Man EP was released by Power Pill.
The Power Pill!
This one is neat. It's a bunch of remixes of the main theme from Pac-Man. I also like the cover art for this one. The way Pac-Man is drawn here makes him look like he's coming in to smooch ya. June 1992 saw the release of the Xylem Tube EP, and with it, the Richard D. James persona we all know and love. Drop the. Just Aphex Twin. And in July, Richard released the Joyrex J4 and Joyrex J5 EPs, both attributed to Caustic Window. So like I mentioned, Richard's early EPs were getting more and more attention in the London dance scene, and he soon crossed paths with the R in R&S Records. Renat was planning to start a subsidiary of R&S focused on dance music called Apollo, and he thought our golden boy Rick was the perfect boy to kick it off. Richard met up with Renat in Belgium, and he brought in tow a box full of cassettes. On these cassettes were tracks Richard had made, some dating back to when he was a teen. Together, they sifted through the tapes and selected 13 tracks to make up Aphex Twin's first album. In November 1992, Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92 was released, and already things are not as they appear. Here's a small example. I was so ready to make a joke about the 85 to 92 part of the title. I'd be like, oh, do I have to listen to Selected Ambient Works 1 through 84? It was going to be so good, but then I had to learn, like a bastard jackass, that the numbers are referring to the years these songs were made, 1985 to 1992. All of these were made on commonplace synths and recorded straight onto cassettes. What's more, look at that word, ambient. Richard had made a good amount of music leading up to his first Aphex Twin record, and I would not describe any of it as ambient, but here we were. This album is the most ambient thing Richard had made up to this point. Some people have said this album commands your attention, and I could not disagree more. I do not see this as music designed to grip you tight. Sure, a song like Green Calx, that's got the classic squelching synth melody and enough moving pieces to get you riled up and discomforted. I can see there. But take a song like Thaw. It's built off a simple kick drum, a syncopated synth that sounds like a steel drum from hell, and a quietly playful melody part. For 9 minutes, these pieces come together in pairs, break apart, drop out. They move slowly by their own volition. Pulse Width has synth chords that could probably go hard in the club if you cranked them up, but they're firmly in the background as the hi-hats and synth bass take center stage. In Extol, which is apparently pronounced crystal, each person is going to gravitate towards a different piece of it. The hazy synths, the present kick drum, or the hi-hat that goes, but then it starts going, or this is going to be one of those days, isn't it? This isn't as much of an issue for this record, but Richard often gives his songs names that are a little bit gibberish and sometimes hard to pronounce. To all you people out there who love to make fun of me whenever I mispronounce something on accident, this one's for you. Anyway, Aegis Bliss has a kick drum that starts to cut out on certain beats, and it kind of gives you this feeling of like guessing when it's gonna cut out. And my point is, it's a record that is built off the little moments, the moments that some might catch on a first listen, while others might not hear until their 10th or 100th. I know that for some, saying that an album does not fully command your attention is considered a negative, but I need you to know that's not the case here. If anything, Saw 85 to 92's greatness comes from its flexibility. If you want to focus all of your attention on this one thing for 74 straight minutes, you'll find plenty to enjoy. But if you put this on in the background while you're doing something else, your attention coming and going across the runtime, you'll probably like it a lot too. You're not going to miss something huge if you get distracted. It's an incredibly inviting introduction to Aphex Twin and a great record overall. Saw 85 to 92 saw a very limited release when it first came out. For context, in the UK, it was only available as an import for a good while. But thanks to insane critical praise and word of mouth, Saw 85 to 92 became a landmark release in 90s electronic music. Aphex Twin also became a representative figure in a new subgenre called IDM, or Intelligent Dance Music. Guys, I'll be real, I've never been a fan of this genre label. I feel like an asshole whenever I say I listen to IDM because it feels like an implicit put down of other music. Oh, if this is intelligent dance music, then everything else must be dumb dance music for people who like to go to the club and have fun and be social with others. I say none of this towards Richard though, as he did not coin the phrase. In fact, he's spoken about how he also thinks the term is kinda stupid. In reality, the phrase was coined by a mailing list for Warp Records' Artificial Intelligence series. Boy, that Warp Records sure was making a name for itself too, wasn't it? Also leading a trail in European dance music. Hello, it's me, Robert Gordon, co-founder of Warp Records. I would like to sign the man who made Alien Fanny Farts to my label. Okay, and so he did. Richard signed to Warp Records shortly after Saw 85 to 92 dropped. January 1993 saw the first full-length project by Polygon Window, Surfing on Sine Waves, and you know what? This one is pretty good. A nice sonic middle point between Saw and the early Aphex Twin EPs. Definitely worth checking out. By February 1993, Analog Bubble Bath Volume 3 had released. That's a weird way to phrase it, but I phrase it like that because I genuinely could not find a hard release date for it. This was the first project to feature a new pseudonym, AFX. In March 1993, we got the Quoth EP, credited to Polygon Window. The title track came from Surfing on Sine Waves. In November 1993, Aphex Twin released the On EP. This was his first release under Warp. It came with the title track, plus remixes from artists like Music and Reload. The title track also got a stop-motion music video directed by Jarvis Cocker. Richard was hands-off during its making and later said that it, quote, does the job. I would love to know what Richard thought the job was. Other EPs released at some point in 1993 include Caustic Window's Joyrex J9i and Joyrex J9ii, and Bradley Strider's Bradley's Robot. In March 1994, Selected Ambient Works Volume 2 was released. Oh, so maybe my Saw 1 through 84 joke does still work. There's no deception to be found here. Saw Volume 2 is an ambient record. This is that John Cage mindset and that Brian Eno grind set. I've seen that critics were not a fan of this when it first released, but in recent years they've changed their collective tune. These silly critics out here trying to change their opinion on this album when in reality they were kind of correct the first time. All right, we're all gonna learn more about each other today. Everybody's got their preferred taste in music, the genres they like and they don't like. Me personally, I don't often indulge in ambient music. Don't get me wrong, it can be great for background noise, but you put a gun to my head and tell me to actively listen to ambient music, and my ass is going straight to hell, aka the Dunkin' Donuts in Lanham, Maryland. I can't do it. I don't have the patience. And if all of that wasn't enough for me, well, if it isn't my arch nemesis, an album runtime that is significantly over an hour. In case you don't know this about me, I am personally inclined to dislike albums that run well over like 80, 90 minutes. There are very few records that to me earn an insanely long runtime, and Saw 2 is not one of them. Now I should temper all of what I've been saying with the following. The same things that I don't personally care for in Saw 2 might be the things that you love it for. If you're into a 2-hour plus soundtrack of well-composed ambient music inspired by Richard's experiences with lucid dreaming and synesthesia, this is it. The songs on Saw Volume 2 don't technically have titles, they're just numbered chronologically. However, each track has a corresponding photo in the liner notes, so you might see people referring to a track by its number or its hypothesized name. To keep things simple, I'll just stick to the numbers. 7 sounds like an atonal city of stars.
City of stars, there's so much that I can't see.
15 has a sick beat, 17 has nice synths, 21 is just kinda lovely. I also clicked with 3, 13, 20, but the rest really didn't stand out to me, it just faded to the background. Which I guess means it succeeds as ambient music? I want to be super clear about this. Saw Volume 2 is not a bad record. It's just that I don't personally get much out of it. One day when I'm gone from this earth and Mike the AI is up and running and giving every album a 10, then we can talk about this record again. For now, it's just not for me. Like I said, Saw 2 at first saw a bit less critical praise thrown at it, but in time it's become a quintessential record in modern ambient music, yeah. Plus, it was a notable early example of a fan community rising up on the internet. That Idea mailing list I mentioned earlier was a place where Aphex fans could come together, discuss these songs, figure out the names based on the photos, and one fan who created a de facto title list would go on to get a job at Warp. That's rad! Saw 2 wasn't Richard's only release in 1994 though. In June, he put out the GAC EP under the alias GAC. These songs were recorded around 1989, 1990. Richard had actually sent these to Warp in the hopes of joining their roster. You might wonder why the artist who had helped make Warp a well-known name wasn't immediately signed with his first submission. This question is answered by the song GAC 3. August 1994 saw the release of Analog Bubble Bath Volume 4. The most noteworthy song is Elephant Song, which has this pretty which has this pretty sick timbre and this really sick... Did you shut up? In January 1995, Richard's old label, RNS Records, put out Classics. It's a compilation of his old EPs prior to Saw 85 to 92. Richard had no creative control over it and thus isn't a fan, but it's also like the only way you can access a lot of these tracks on modern streaming services, so... what are you gonna do? March 1995, we got the Ventolin EP. The title track is named after a drug used to treat asthma, but one of the side effects is tinnitus, aka that weird ringing in your ear you might get sometimes. It's genuinely unpleasant to listen to, but I guess that was the point, so A+ out of 10. It also features remixes by Richard, and this is another fun part of being a Richard D. James fan. When Richard does a remix, sometimes it's based on the original song, and sometimes it's just an entirely new thing. The remixes on the Ventolin EP are basically new songs. But just 1 month later, in April 1995, we got I Care Because You Do. First off, let's get this out of the way. I Care Because You Do has actual beats. So already I'm back on board the Aphex Twin. But more than that, I find this record really interesting as both a continuation of Richard's ambient aspirations and an exploration of more caustic percussion. On one hand, if you ignore the beats and look at only the melodies and production, you would find a fairly gorgeous album here. The strings on Icthedral are beautiful. Alberto Balsam is hold music for the coolest store in your local mall. Moo Kid envelops you in these synths with a melody that casually slides between pitches. Next Heap With is less an Aphex Twin track and more an outtake from a Christopher Nolan movie score. Easily the most orchestral thing Richard has made yet. But oh, hold on. Let's throw the beats back in. You start getting pummeled by the kick drum on Wax the Nip, the trash can snare on Cow Cut as a Twin, the everything of Start As You Mean to Go On. Ventolin is also on here. You know, the one that's inspired by tinnitus. Suddenly, your brain is looking like this. But even on the wilder tracks, you're still bound to find some beauty. And it's that dichotomy that makes this an engrossing listen. In conclusion, I Care Because You Do is a land of contrasts. Sales for I Care Because You Do were a tad less than Saw Volume 2, though basically every critic agreed it was a step up from Saw 2. But it was missing Carl Lewis running around New York with tire treads on his feet, so thankfully, Richard corrected that real quick. In July, Richard scored a commercial for Pirelli tires. It's pretty wild to imagine the man who made .0180871 Left Channel scoring anything made to sell products, but he does good work, and the commercial itself is quite famous. The next month, Aphex Twin released the Donkey Rhubarb EP. The title track has a video where this happens. The EP also has a version of Icthedral that was reorchestrated by composer Philip Glass. That's so cool to see the worlds of electronica and classical coming together. Pancake Lizard is also great, with some stunning string arrangements in the second half. In October and December 1995, we got two separate EPs released by AFX. Both came together as Hangable Auto Bulb. Now, first off, the assembled collection of these two is a pretty good mini-album, and there are some great highlights. Mashed Potatoes, Laughable Butane Bob, Arched Maid via RDJ, Wabby Legs. Every Day has narration from a housewife, who I thought was Björk at first, but apparently it isn't.
Oh, get me another tie, get me another shirt.
Side note, if it interests you, Björk and Richard are pretty friendly with each other. They toured together in 1995, and some of his gear recommendations helped influence the making of her album, Medulla. I love it when my faves get along. But in the context of Richard's discography, Hangable Auto Bulb was the first time Richard shifted away from analog processes and towards digital programming with wild rhythms, a style which came to be known as drill and bass. I'll also take a second to mention Melodies from Mars. This is an unreleased tape Richard made around this time to show his potential for video game scoring. It's never been officially released, but songs from it have popped up on other releases by Richard, and it's easy to find a leak out there. In June 1996, we got a straight-up collab album between Richard and Mike Paradinas, known as Music, Expert Knob Twiddlers, a neat record with a cool cover. I recommend it if you enjoy either artist. Then, in August 1996, Aphex Twin dropped the Girl Boy EP. The main mix of the title track is excellent, continuing to blend the orchestral and percussive elements from I Care. Milkman is the first song to have Richard straight up singing. He's on here singing about how much he wants milk. What a quaint song. I wonder where he's getting the milk from.
I would like some milk from the milkman's wife's tits.
Richard. Much like Ventolin leading into I Care, Girl Boy also preceded a new full-length album, Richard D. James Album, in November 1996. Richard D. James Album continues the contrasting palette that Richard D. James person was doing on I Care Because You Do album, but I think it excels beyond I Care because of the new technology available to Richard. Gone for the most part were the physical synths and instruments. Most of this record was done on a Mac computer, and it allowed Richard to make absolutely bonkers sounds, some of which would not be doable by human hands. There's a real playfulness to this one, like a child who just got a new toy and is milking it for all it's worth, but not like that though. Another reason why I think RDJA succeeds is how accessible and immediate it is. Ford kicks things off with lovely strings and a great beat. Cornish Acid had me grooving within 6 seconds. Fingerbib pairs synths and strings together for a potent blend of catchiness. Karn Marth has a beat that will split your head in two. Goon Gumpus is not only a song that conjures childhood and innocence, but is also a song that is called Goon Gumpus. It's honestly tremendous how well this one combines so many disparate elements together. 1 minute, you're listening to the most alien thing you've ever heard. The next, you realize you could put Taylor Swift or Ariana Grande over it, and it would work perfectly.
'Cause I knew you were trouble when you walked in. So shame on me now.
Oh, and all of this comes in under 40 minutes? Woo! This might be my favorite Aphex Twin record yet. Richard D. James' album sold even less than I Care in the UK, but who cares because I like it. There was also a plan to release a Caustic Window album in 1996, but that did not come to fruition, though a few test pressings of that album were made. Behold the phone, because Richard was about to pull off his greatest Aphex Twin yet. He would release his 2 most commercially successful songs and then put out this. First, in October 1997, Aphex Twin released the Come to Daddy EP, and with it, the title track. Richard described it as his parody of a heavy metal track, and that's super clear when you listen. This is the most wholly abrasive thing Richard has put out in a while. But even still, it's catchy. It also has a wild video. I'm trying not to use clips that could induce seizures, so I have to pull clips that will give you nightmares. The EP features 2 remixes of Come to Daddy, and like some of Richard's other remixes, they are totally different songs. There's also Flim, which is the song you punch milk jugs to, and IZUS with its nice chill groove. The only release from Richard in 1998 was Compilation, a collection of the past Caustic Window EPs. Then, in March 1999, we got the Window Licker EP. Can I say something without y'all getting mad? I don't really know what to say about this because it just is. This is literally the cover of the Window Licker EP. But all of this distracts from the real takeaway that you should have from this EP. The title track is one of the best songs Richard has ever made. These warped and warbled vocal harmonies flow off each other, and as the song goes on, Richard chops them up, splices them together with the beat, and all of this builds to this gloriously distorted outro. One of the most satisfying moments in Aphex Twin history. It goes very well with Soulja Boy's Pretty Boy swag.
Looking for a yellow bone, long hair star. Thick in the hips, come get in my car.
Thank you, Girl Talk, for your service on that. And don't forget about its music video. The first 4 minutes are a 90s hip-hop video parody with like 1 swear word per second. Then Richard comes in with his limo. Then he dances. Then this. Then this. Then this. Special shout out as well to Nanu on this EP. It's got a beat built off of toy boxes, and Richard made it for his girlfriend at the time. Nice. Come to Daddy and Window Licker inexplicably became two of Richard's biggest songs ever. Aphex Twin was somehow at the height of popularity. You could even hear it in the sounds of other bands. Famed Brits Radiohead were very inspired by Aphex and other Warp acts when making Kid A. I bet Richard was so happy to know he influenced such a classic. I heard maybe 5 or 6 tracks, and I thought they sounded really, really cheesy. I'm so sorry, friends, but you need to stop liking Kid A right now. I don't make the rules in here. This is just how this works. There's a form in the description. Please mail it to whomever the current UK Prime Minister is at this time. One more release to mention before the next full-length album, July 2001's 2 remixes by AFX. Vote now on what you think this release is. Got your answer in mind? Cool, it's 2 remixes by AFX. In October 2001, Aphex Twin gave us Drux. Drux it's kinda like this. Actually, no, it's more like this. Wait a minute, I changed my mind. It's really
Ven a
like
la fiesta de
this.
cumpleaños de Santi el 25 de septiembre en su casa. Tendremos música.
According to Richard, this album came about because he accidentally left an MP3 player with 180 songs on a plane, and he released it to gain the upper hand on leakers. Another possible reason is that he wanted out of his deal with Warp, and this album would fulfill it. And boy, did he fulfill. When you dive into Drux, you'll find that it separates into 2 different albums. The first is another continuation of what Richard was doing on I Care and RDJA. If you enjoy those 2 albums, you will probably enjoy songs like Vord Hospin, Bibi de Hyancourt, 54 Simaru Beats, Meltface 6, and Mount St. Michel plus St. Michael's Mount. If you're looking for Richard to do something new with this sound, you won't really find it here. Where you will find something new is the second album within Drux. If Richard's new tool of RDJA was the Mac, his new tool for Drux is the prepared piano. He was once again back on the J. Cage lifestyle. For the unaware, prepared piano refers to the practice of altering the strings of a piano in order to create different timbres. John Cage famously used things like screws, bolts, plastics, nuts, etc. While some of Richard's piano pieces are indeed prepared, others are just nice compositions with no real trickery. Highlights from this side include Shratha Tyne, High Asculus Lif Adagro, Prep Gwork 36, Ruglin Holland, Nanu 2. Avril 14th is another piano-led highlight, and it has inadvertently become Richard's biggest song ever. It's been used in films like Four Lions and Marie Antoinette. It got sampled in a Lonely Island SNL sketch.
So strong to me, you belong to me, like a very hairy Jake Gyllenhaal to me.
But what I know it most from is its use in the song Blame Game from Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Let's play the blame game. I love you.
I wish I had a nice story to share about Kanye and Richard working together, but according to Richard, he was badly mistreated by Kanye's team. At least he got the credit. I'll also pay respect to Lorna Derrick, which is a voice message from Richard's family singing happy birthday to him. It's such a personal little thing to throw on an album like this, and I love it for that. Oh, and you may have noticed the song titles on Drux and how easy to pronounce they are. I would crack a joke about how these song names are gibberish, but many of them are actually Cornish. And the ones that aren't Cornish are gibberish. Drux is the kind of album you gotta live with for a while, and even after that time has passed, you still might not like it. Richard said he expected people to listen to Drux the same way he listened to albums at that time. Go in, find the tracks you like, and ignore the rest. I can't say that I love Drux or that I will re-listen to it again, top to bottom, anytime soon, but I'm glad it exists, and I will certainly return to my favorite songs from it. Drux drove a truck through Richard's fanbase. This is widely considered his most divisive full-length project. and following its release, Richard's output would start slowing down a bit. In March 2003, we got 26 Mixes for Cash, a compilation of past remixes. Now, that title might lead you to believe that this is just some blatant cash grab, but there's an actual meaning behind it. When he did remixes, Richard didn't like labels having his bank info, so he would go meet them in person and exchange the recordings for cash. So it's not 26 mixes for cash, it's 26 mixes for cash. Clear difference. Most of these mixes aren't on streaming, but if you only check out one from this compilation, please make it the remix of You Can't Hide Your Love. That one is phenomenal. For the first half of 2005, Richard released Analord, which sounds like a title Tobias Funke would have on his business card. This was another AFX release that took shape as a series of 12-inch vinyl records. Naturally, the series started with entry 10 in December 2004. Then it scaled back to 1 and went up from there. For this project, Richard returned to analog programming for the first time in several years. All in total, the 10 EPs come together to form 4 hours and 48 minutes of music. No. I cannot, in good conscience, recommend a 4-hour, 48-minute compilation to any person with responsibilities. What I could recommend, though, is Richard's compilation of the compilation. Chosen Lords is a CD compilation of highlights later released in April 2006. I say check that out first if you're interested in hearing Richard go back to analog tech, and if you're really into it, then dig more into the rest of the Analord EPs. In April 2007, Richard released Confederation Trough under a new alias, The Tuss, another solid acid techno romp. Same goes for The Tuss's second project in June of that same year, Rush Up Edge. And then things went silent. Rush Up Edge would be the last project Richard officially released for about 7 years. During this downtime, Richard moved to Scotland, got married, had kids, spent time with his steel-hulled tank. That part is true, by the way. Richard owns a tank. Richard did say in 2010 that he had 6 unreleased albums ready to go, which included Melodies for Mars from earlier. He did also perform a remix of Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima, which is both a very random piece to remix, but also a match made in heaven. If you haven't, check out that remix and the original Threnody. Great piece, will definitely not give you nightmares. We'd have to wait a few more years before we got a hint of any new music from Richard. And it started with some very old music. In 2014, a test pressing of that unreleased 1996 Caustic Window album got listed on Discogs for $13,500. Music forum We Are the Music Makers set up a Kickstarter to buy it, and by the end of the campaign, which had been blessed by Richard and Reflex, fans had raised $43,000. Everyone who contributed got a digital copy of the album, and the vinyl was sold on eBay with the money split between Richard, the Kickstarter patrons, and Doctors Without Borders. The person who bought it, by the way, was the creator of Minecraft. Richard said this whole story touched him and inspired him to finally put out a new album. In September 2014, Aphex Twin released Syro. So after 13 years, what kind of Aphex Twin are we getting here? Well, all of them mixed into one. Richard described Syro as his pop album and the end of an era. He says none of the tracks on here are all that innovative, and honestly, I see that as a nice thing. With that much downtime between main releases, I don't think he needed to reinvent the wheel. I think he just needed to be the wheel once again. Syro is the wheel. The tracks on here come from sessions spanning the 6 or 7 years prior. One might call it Selected Works 07 to 14. And stylistically, they're a grab bag of everything Richard had done before. Opener and first single, Mini Pops 67 120.2 weaves together expected Aphex beats and synths, but also opens up for these nice vocal and piano samples. Papat 4 155 rock synth chords that could pass as a parody of Wonderful Christmas Time.
Simply having a wonderful Christmas time.
Meanwhile, the song with Xmas in its title, Xmas_Eve T10 Thanaton 3 mix, has the sick bass line that gets to shine in the middle. Cyro U473T 8+E Piezoluminescence Mix, Circlant 14 Shrymoming Mix, S950TX16W ASR10 Earth Portal Mix, Praduke 29. God, I love saying words! All of these meld together the familiar while leaving enough room for the unexpected. Speaking of unexpected, the closer Isetsana is another simple piano piece reminiscent of Avril 14th. Back when this record came out, this was the song off Cyro I came back to the most. It feels like Richard cooling down with his piano, with a window open to let in some of the outside world. Great way to end things off and to recenter yourself following the rest of the record. Everything about the record feels so effortless. Even the name, Cyro, was coined by one of Richard's kids, and it's short for Cyrobonchus, a word that does not exist. It's a great time. Check it out.
I start hearing crying and babies crying and screaming.
Cyro was an immediate success, and it went on to earn Richard a Grammy for Best Dance Electronic Album. Unfortunately, though, it's also his last full-length Aphex Twin album as of now. Despite that, Aphex Twin is kept consistently busy. Not with albums, mind you, we're now 9 years removed from Cyro, and it doesn't seem like Richard is super interested in albums as an art form anymore. What is he, the general public for the past decade? Instead, he's focused on putting out EPs and touring every so often. In January 2015, he dropped Computer Controlled Acoustic Instruments Part 2. If you're wondering what Part 1 is, it's Drux. This is a mini sequel to Drux. It's okay. Later in August, there was Orphan DJ Celic 2006-08, the first release from AFX since Analord. Oh, and that same year, he also casually dropped 269 unreleased songs on SoundCloud as user 1808191. Really scraping the barrel for alias names now, aren't we? In July 2016, there was the Cheetah EP, created entirely with one synth. It also featured Richard's first music video since Windowlicker. And get this, it was directed by a 12-year-old Aphex Twin fan. Apparently, this fan had posted some homemade Aphex Twin music videos on his YouTube channel, and he was commissioned by Richard and Warp to make an official video. That's great. Also, this isn't like a real complaint, it's a joke, we're having fun here, but that has got to be the normiest cover Richard has ever been associated with. I know it's a reference, but compared to his other covers, this one looks like a Canva template. In September 2018, we got the Collapse EP. It's like a pseudo-sequel to Cyro, not just in sound, but in title names that give me epilepsy. In August 2021, his sister Julie became Wales's prime minister for climate change. Lastly, this year in July, the latest Aphex Twin project dropped, the Black Box Life Recorder 21F/Inner Room 7 F760 EP. Like Cyro and Collapse before it, this one isn't a major departure from the Aphex Sonic brand, but it's still a great time. By this point, Richard had carved such a singular space for himself, his sound, his way of conceiving music, his face. And just hearing him play in that space is a blast. If you want to get into Aphex Twin, as far as studio albums go, I would recommend checking out Saw 85-92, I Care Because You Do, Richard D. James album, and Cyro. For EPs and releases from other aliases, I'd recommend Surfing on Sine Waves, Hangable Autobulb, Come to Daddy, Windowlicker, Collapse, and Black Box Life Recorder. And if you want to learn more about sonic pioneers in the worlds of electronic and pop music, check out my Deep Discog dive on Björk.